Testing. Check. Check. We are going to actually get started, and we're going to start with a word of prayer. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. We thank you for allowing us to gather here in this place at this time. We thank you for what you are beginning in us. We thank you for the work that is set before us, God. We also ask that you would bless this meeting, and as we go through this forum, we ask that you would give us direction and wisdom and knowledge. We also ask, God, that we leave here with clarity of acts, God, that we go out and do what you want us to do in this community. We ask that you would also help us to bring this community together, God. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. And welcome. I'm Gary Westbrook. For those of you who might not know, I'm 7th Ward Alderman here in East Moline. And as a result of some cancellations, I'm your moderator for tonight. So I want you to bear with me as I try to shuffle through this I'm challenged a little bit. Let me put it that way. But I want to welcome our panel here. And in a moment, they'll have an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do. But before we go any further, let me give you a little digital announcement, because I'm sure just about everybody in here has a cell phone. So if you would, please silence that so that we don't have those interruptions. Thank you. We've all read and we've all heard and we've seen some of the events that are going on nationwide and how the relationship between community, law enforcement is breaking down. So we thought that we would have this forum here so that we can be proactive, so that we can talk about how it relates to East Moline, how it relates to the Quad Cities, and actually get out in front of these things before something happens. We've had incidences here in the Quad Cities, and we've overcome those without rioting and without those types of behaviors. But there's no guarantee going forward that we can continue in that vein unless we talk. And as we all know, I'm sure we can all agree that communication often leads to cooperation, and that's where we're trying to get to with this forum. I will also add that, as you can see, we have cameras pretty much everywhere. So for those of you that are here, you can let those who are not here know that if they go to www.communityoutreachworshipcenter.com, they can access this forum via the internet. So, Community Outreach Worship Center has been active in the past in community activities, and we're continuing that tradition here today, beginning with a series of forums that we plan to have to address the issues in our community. Other topics that we'll deal with in the future are such as, city services. How does the city serve you as a citizen, and what is it that they should be doing, and how do you relate with the city? We want to talk about health and wellness and other topics that are important to people today. So as we go forward, you will be seeing those things. We have planned to do those on the first Sunday of every month up until March. So there'll be several of them, and you can put those on your calendar. So now I'm done with all my talking. I'm going to turn it over to these gentlemen here on the stage with me, and I'm going to start on my right and allow them to introduce themselves and to share a little bit with you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Sheriff Jerry Bustos. I am your sheriff here in Rock Island County. I've been with the sheriff's office for 32 years now. I've been the sheriff since 2014. I can also tell you, as many of you know, I'm a lifetime resident of East Moline. For the most part, I was born and raised in East Moline, went to UT, and here I am all these years later, and I'm still here.
Thank you. My name is John Reynolds. I'm the police chief here in East Moline. I was appointed just this past November, so it's 11 months. I just completed my 23rd year. I was just telling Jared, we hired somebody on a Friday during homecoming week, and that was me 23 years ago. I remember like it was yesterday. So I am an Allman graduate from Moline. I started off, I was up at UT. That was probably my most favorable job. I was on the police department besides the chief. But I worked my way up, became a sergeant, had to start back on third shift, became a lieutenant, start back on third shift again. Made it to captain in 2008, and then just the chief in 2015. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John McGehee, and I'm the Rock Island County State's Attorney. I was elected in 2012 out of Rock Island County. Rock Island County serves about 150,000 people, and I represent the people of Rock Island County. I'm an attorney with about 25 years of practice. I grew up in Silvis, and that's where my law practice was at, in Silvis, and also went to United Township High School, then Augustana College. So I am a true Quad Cityan. Right now, as the state's attorney, I have approximately 25 people who work in the state's attorney's office, and 13 of them are actual prosecutors. We prosecute misdemeanors, felony, traffic, and juvenile cases. I also have a civil division where I represent the county in any kind of civil litigation that goes on, and I have 2 attorneys in the civil division. So thank you for allowing me to come here this afternoon and offering my thoughts, concerns about the issues facing Rock Island County.
Good afternoon. My name is Cannon Burridge, and I'm from right here in East Moline as well. Currently, I play professional basketball, and I have played for the past 3 years overseas in Europe, Asia, and now Australia. Each summer that I come home, I come right here, right back to East Moline, and it was no different this past summer, except this summer I decided to throw an event down at Hereford Park, and it was called United We Ball, and it was pretty much a way to bring all law enforcement together with the community. You know, let's all eat, let's have fun, let's get to know each other. And, you know, basketball is right up my alley, so why not? Let's all have a basketball game and get to know each other, become one through sport and talking and engaging. So, yeah, I had the opportunity to do that this summer, and it's been great.
Thank you. Before I begin to ask questions, I just want to add that at the end of this forum, these gentlemen have agreed to hang out for a little while, so if any of you have individual questions you'd like to ask them, they can make themselves available for that. We appreciate that. I would like to begin again, I'll start with Mr. Burridge this time, and I want to ask a general question to all of them. And that question is, why is it important for us to have these conversations about relationships between the community and police and law?
I think it's very important that we have these discussions about law enforcement in the community because it keeps the conversation fresh. It keeps it going. It's been a while since people have heard the name Mike Brown, and it's also been a while since people have heard the name of Matthew Gerald, who was a police officer that was killed in Baton Rouge in a protest there. So it's very important that we keep these things fresh, we keep them going, and we keep them at topic. Because, in our society and even sometimes in our community, race is the big elephant in the room. And it's something that we all need to adjust. We need to approach it with open minds and just keep the conversation fresh and keep it going and keep learning from it.
Mr. McGee.
Well, as the state's attorney, I think we have to be out talking in the community because we need to be held accountable to the people as elected officials. And we need to hear the complaints, concerns, and issues facing our community. Sometimes we go to our offices and we don't really focus on what is going on necessarily in our community. So this is an opportunity for me to get out and to meet with people, talk to people, and get some information of actually what's going on in our community. I also think people need to know who the elected officials are, and this is a way for us to become more transparent as well. So you see that we are trying to work hard to do our best and to really examine the issues, that we are human too, we are people as well, and we have tough jobs. They are very difficult decisions that we have to make. And if we have some discussion or input from the community, I think it really helps us in making those difficult decisions and trying to balance the needs of both law enforcement as well as what the people need as well too. So this is a good opportunity for me to get out and to hear and discuss those kinds of issues.
Thank you, Chief.
I agree. I feel it's important to have these talks. And one example of I feel that we're at work, at least in East Moline, is several years ago when we had an officer-involved shooting. We had had a relationship with the community, and we were able to work with different community leaders to keep control of the area at the time and tamper down some of the maybe outsiders or those who would like to start things up. And I think by continually having the rapport with the community, by, we have officers in the school, we have community-oriented officer at some of the housing complexes, the continued events we've had to reach out to the community have to continue on an ongoing basis, and this is just another part of that.
Sheriff?
Well, I'll finish off by saying that as sheriff, like Mr. McGehee, all 150,000 people in Rock Island County are people that I'm concerned about. I can tell you from my perspective, it is all about public service. Everybody that's in this room, everybody that's in Rock Island County, whether they're visiting or whether they live here, it is about public service and doing the right thing to make everybody's lives safer and provide an environment where they can be as successful as they can be wherever they are in the county. And I think it's a communication issue. It is imperative that we have an open dialogue, that we understand each other regardless of what part of the community you're from. Again, I'm from East Moline. I certainly spent a large part of my childhood in Watertown. I have a lot of friends there still. And so I understand that although no matter where I come from, there are other areas and other views that we need to take into consideration and make sure that other areas that I'm not perhaps used to are comfortable in their own environment.
Thank you. This next question, Mr. McGehee, I'm going to ask for you directly. And of course, if any of you have any comments that you'd like to make on any question that I ask directly, feel free to do so. Mr. McGehee, what steps, if any, have you taken to reduce unfair and often unnecessary incarceration?
That's a very good question. I started a program called the Offender Initiative Program in Rock Island County. It's an actual statute, but it had not been used in Rock Island County. And I started this program in 2013. And what it does is that first-time offenders on certain drug charges, theft charges, pretty low-level felony type charges, defendants have an opportunity to go into this program where they are put on probation for approximately 12 months, and they have to report to probation. At the end of that 12-month period, then the charge is completely dismissed against them. That means then they can expunge it as well too, so it does not appear on their record. So basically the law and the procedure is intended mostly for younger people who get into trouble. We all know that young people sometimes have issues, that they don't have a lot of experience. They want to speak out. They want to do certain things which they get in trouble for. And they really don't have much of a criminal history, so they can go into this program and then they can emerge and they do not have a criminal record. We all know that anybody who gets a felony, even when they're young, it can be disastrous for their life. And they have a very difficult time then finding employment in the future. So this is an opportunity for generally young people to have that break. And it's been an amazing program. I probably have put maybe 50 to 60 people in this program since I began it. And I think I've only had maybe 3 people who were not successful, who did not comply with probation, and then had to come out of the program and then go back into the criminal justice system. So it has been extremely successful. Of course, we always look at the individual and we make a decision whether we think that they are going to be a good candidate for the program. But again, that is something that I think has been very helpful for individuals who come in touch here with the justice system in Rock Island County. There are some other things here that I have tried to do as well too, and I try to impress upon my prosecutors that every single case that comes in my office is important, and not to become routine, not to do certain things just because they've been done that way in the past. I want my prosecutors to study the file, look at the individual, and see exactly what is going on in their life. Of course, sometimes, we have to be warriors as prosecutors. Sometimes we have to be tough, but not all the time. We have to choose and pick and decide how we want to prosecute every single case that comes in my office. And we have over 1,200 felonies that are brought in Rock Island County on a yearly basis with 13 prosecutors. That is a very heavy caseload. But I encourage them on a daily basis to really understand what is going on with the file and try to make the right kind of decisions. Thank you.
If I may just add on to that, in addition to that, again, as Mr. McGehee spoke, those programs are very successful. And it's good in that, especially young people, and I can tell you that today there's hardly any young people that don't have some sort of brush with the law as they're growing up, because frankly they're kids and they do those kind of things. But what that does is that keeps them out of the system, so when they do grow up a little bit and they do go to get a job or they do go into the military, they don't have that mark there that perhaps prevents them. Now, we've also done what we can to work with young people that do have that felony, and John's office has certainly helped us as well to help those get expunged. So when they do go off to start their life, they don't have that mark on their career. But additionally, you talk about incarceration and keep the numbers down. We certainly have for many years been part of drug court, which is very similar, and again, Mr. McGee's office works hand in hand with us on those, that those people that are in jail with drug problems, we try and divert them away to a system that's meant to deal with that. And that has been a very successful tool that we've used. In addition to that, for several years, we've had mental health court. One of the issues as a sheriff, and certainly prior to me becoming sheriff, I was the jail administrator for several years, is dealing with the people with mental illness that are in Rock Island County Jail. I can tell you, absolutely, county jail is no place for people with a mental illness. It is no place, because they are not getting, even though we work hand in hand with Robert Young, they are not getting the help that they truly need, and it's an off-site program. So those are some of the things that we use, as well as I know with the new law dealing with low-level marijuana cases and things that it's no longer criminal to the point that it's jailable. We for years haven't allowed just a small amount of marijuana to come into the county jail and stay there. We booked them in, and we were booking them right back out with a notice to appear. There's no sense in the taxpayers paying for somebody that has 4 or 5 grams of marijuana.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I would just add that we've continued to use a peer justice program for juvenile offenders through the Youth Service Bureau to avoid having to go through the court system on first-time offenders as well on the lower level juvenile offenses. And that program, if you're not familiar with it, they actually have attorneys there from inside and outside the legal system. There's attorneys from John Deere, things like that. They'll encourage and show. There's teen volunteers that go there. Some of them get credit through their school or community activity. And then some of the people who have gone through it, they have came back and the teens act as the attorneys and the judges, and then they decide what the punishment is for the juvenile offender. And then that way it doesn't go into the juvenile court system.
Okay, thank you. Now, as we all know, and as we've all seen on TV and read in the newspaper, that many of the shooting incidents that we're finding, that we're seeing, begin with traffic stops. I think that's the overwhelming case of these justified or unjustified shootings, whatever they might be, begin primarily with traffic stops. So, Chief Reynolds, if you would, explain police procedure as it relates to traffic stops. What is it that you, as a police officer, expect when you pull somebody over for, let's say, a tail light out?
There is a new law coming for the high schools that they have to explain to juveniles, what goes involved in a traffic stop. And actually, that's something we've been doing I did it at UT in 98, 99, and 2000. I took the driver's ed class and I did a presentation on everything involved in a traffic stop. Matter of fact, I guess the lesson was how not to be pulled over by the police. And what I would explain is, have all your lights on in your vehicle. Make sure all your lights are working properly. Make sure you comply with the rules of the road. If you do get pulled over, this is what the police would like. Obviously, pull over right away. Don't continue once you see red lights. It might not be you they're going after. They need to pass you, or you need to pull over right away so then they can affect the traffic stop. Compliance, obviously, is the biggest thing by pulling over, and then having your hands visible, being respectful. We teach that all of our traffic stops is an opportunity for community relations in the police department. So we expect compliance. We expect the officer to be professional. We expect whatever happens as a result. If somebody has a warrant, they don't have a license, there's consequences for that. So I guess short of going through a whole traffic stop, it's mainly compliance. And another thing we've been trying to get across, I was involved with some of the Village of 1,000 Elders writing up some of their stuff, was comply now and complain later. You can contest it later, either through the court system or go to the police department and make a complaint if there is a problem with that stop.
I'd like to add a little something to that as well, too, as it relates to the issue as it relates to court. We have outstanding judges in Rock Island County. We have a lot of traffic court judges, and they follow the law. And there are lots of rules and case law and statutes on what police can do when they do a stop. There are constitutional guarantees that all of us have in the United States as it relates to being pulled over. And if the police in any form or fashion do not follow those certain guidelines and the constitutional issues, the court will deal with it appropriately. They really do. They do a good job. They take their job very seriously. And they want law enforcement to follow all the rules. So if there's something that was not done proper in the stop, it does get worked out in court. So that's what I encourage all people to do as well, too.
Thank you. Mr. Bird. As we know, as we were talking about the traffic stops and the justified or unjustified shootings in those incidences, we have seen that primarily it's African Americans that have been on the wrong end of the gun, if you will. So, as it relates to that, it has created within the country a racial divide, which may have already been here, but now it's kind of exploded, if you will. So, what would you propose to bridge that gap in America?
To bridge that gap between race relations and community policing, I would just encourage a lot of activities, maybe that the police officers can come down and do with the community. Just maybe staying involved, which is pretty much the main motivation for why I had my event. It gets the community involved. It gets the law enforcement involved. We're getting to know each other. We're getting to see each other as people, not just authoritative figures. And just things like that, mentorship programs. Officer Reynolds, like he said about the program about teaching how to comply when they're pulled over. Just little things like that, multiple things like that, and I feel the relations with the community and the police could be a lot better.
Thank you. Actually, I'd like to expand that same question to the rest of the panel as well, and you can chime in at will.
Well, I 100% agree with what you said. It's really about communication. It's about understanding. It's about knowing what perspective each of us have as we're coming together on whatever that contact is, rather than the assumption, because I think it's the assumption that carries us away sometimes. So I think forums really, Gary, like this one, really helps out. And as we get these forums out and people hear about them, perhaps we can have these forums where all the seats are filled, and we're reaching all those people on a one-to-one basis, whether it's through this dialogue or whether it's through a restaurant when we've all stopped to get a bite to eat or something. But I think communication is the ultimate way we're going to fix this problem.
Chief?
I would think part of the problem, how you mentioned that most of them were African Americans that were on the short end. Actually, Washington Post did a study, and this was this year's stats. 440 people were killed by the police. 238 were white, 123 were black, and the rest were Hispanic. So I think part of it is what's put out there, what the media is putting out, or what is fostered, that it is not just, it's not a black versus police or anything like that. It's a societal issue, and it's just frustrating sometimes in law enforcement because we don't do a good enough job of putting out all the good that we do. Cops don't like to do any more paperwork, but one thing, and the FBI is going to do a national database, but it's all the times that you did pull your gun or all the times that you did use force that didn't result in a death. We need to get those statistics out so people see how much, there is non-compliance. We put hands on people. This is a split-second decision a lot of times, and it's helpful if people go through the Citizen Police Academy or the don't shoot scenarios, so they see all that goes involved in a split-second decision that is second-guessed, and then once it's played over and over again, it just fosters bad relations sometimes.
We have a question, too.
After we finish this, I'll allow that question.
I just want to talk a little bit about court and what happens that I think is relevant to this issue. On Tuesday morning, we do what we call preliminary hearings. Preliminary hearings is really the first opportunity to have a contested hearing between the prosecution and the defense. And most cases, not all, most cases, the public defender represents the defendant. And it's an opportunity for law enforcement to get up and testify on basic evidence that the prosecution has to proceed with the case. And it's so very interesting when I talk to the detectives and the law enforcement officers who show up for that preliminary hearing, they know the defendant. They know of the defendant. They know something about their past. They know something about their family. They know who they are. And I think that that's really important in the process of community prosecution, is for us to know people and to know exactly why they are there. And you'd be surprised how many times law enforcement will say, you know, this is a case that, you know, it's either not that serious, or this is a person that kind of got caught up with the wrong people. They kind of know the family. And it's amazing how law enforcement is really caring of what they do and their job to protect and serve the community. I mean, they really do believe in what they're doing, and they want the best for the system. They want the best for the way the court proceeding goes, and really the best also for the defendant. I mean, to be fair to the defendant. And it's just, the conversations are just amazing of how much the police really know what's going on in our community. And I think that that needs to be done by the community as well, too, with law enforcement. They need to talk to your police officers and get to know them and try to understand what they're doing and how difficult their jobs are, and to discuss with them the everyday law enforcement issues that they're facing. Because I think that the majority, most all law enforcement really do care about their job, their reputation, and their integrity. And I just want everybody to know that. And that's something that I have seen as the state's attorney. And it was just amazing to me how caring most of the detectives and law enforcement are. So thank you.
I just wanted to clarify something with you. You mentioned this statistic, the 440. Are all 440 of these related to ordinary traffic stops?
It's just deaths.
Deaths, period. Okay.
Deaths as a result of law enforcement.
All right. Thank you.
I can tell you that from everything that we see now, and regardless of where it comes from, those of us sitting here cannot offer an explanation for everything that we see. Some of it we understand. I can certainly say from my perspective, there's some things I see that I don't understand either. And so you just have to wait until the facts come out, however long that takes. And the problem with the criminal justice system in the United States, it takes a while. These things are not done in the span of 4 hours or 8 hours or a week either. Some of these take months. But to your point about where you grew up and how things have changed, and again, growing up where I did, I used to listen to the siren from the state hospital too. So I can understand what you're talking about. But we can't offer everything to be perfect because we know they're not. But this forum and ones like this, with frankly questions just like that, is going to help us understand each other better. And I think that's what it really comes down to. It's an understanding of what we want. And I'll add one other thing, is that one of the critical things that we in law enforcement deal with is we must reflect our own community. And I can tell you as the sheriff, and again, I've been there for 32 years, Chief Reynolds has been there for many, many years as well. We struggle to have our community, our police departments and sheriff's office reflect our own community. We struggle with that. And that, I think, is a huge step we can take in understanding.
Any other comments?
I would just say our officers, we have hundreds, if not thousands of hours of training that we've done. to know the law, to enforce the law, and we're judged on certain case law, like Graham versus Connor. It has to do with reasonableness. What's reasonable? What's reasonable to at the situation at hand, and not necessarily as a Monday morning quarterback, if you will. So our officers are trained on a lot of these things, and it is human error sometimes. And like the sheriff said, I don't always agree with a lot of it, but the videos that you see, not many of them look good. But then what I try to think is how many of the hundreds of thousands of other times that it went well that there's no video out there. So that's my take on what's being shown sometimes. And here in East Moline, I feel that we do a very good job of relating. We're continually talking. Yeah, we're going to have incidents here and there on traffic stops or what have you, but I just encourage people to come talk to us after the fact and see if we can resolve it.
Thank you. Thank you. We recognize, and I think I can speak for just about everybody, at least in this audience, if not everybody in this community, when I say it's not reasonable for us to expect perfection from our law enforcement people. They are people too, just like us, and they make mistakes. But it is important that we continue to discuss these mistakes, these shortcomings, and try to find solutions to those types of problems, rather than just glossing them over or hardening those things so that they become a division between the community and the police. So that's one of the reasons we're doing what we're doing tonight. We have to keep the lines of communication open, even when we see things that don't seem right. And we all know, and of course we're grateful for the press being here, but we all know that if it bleeds, it leads. We know that. And we know there are other things going on. And I can tell you some of the good stories about law enforcement and some of the good things they do. So we need to just keep that in mind and always be cognizant of the fact that they are humans just like us. And when they punch in the morning, they want to go home to their families too. So with that in mind, we're going to move on. I got a couple more questions to answer, and I'm going to split these questions, one to my right and one to my left. And I think I'll start on my left with these two gentlemen here. What are your thoughts and what is your position on stop and frisk? I know we don't have that here. Well, I understand they do it in Chicago. So, I mean, it could end up here.
Well, I believe that they tried to do this in New York recently, and I think it had become a subject of the debate the other night between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump on the issue of stop and frisk. And what happened is that a court, a federal judge in that case, the way the procedure was being done in the state of New York, that it was unconstitutional. That we have certain constitutional protections in our country. And I truly believe that. I learned that in law school, I've learned that as a lawyer, and I practice those as a prosecutor and as the state's attorney, and I demand that of my prosecutors as well, too. There are protections that we have as Americans. And generally, just stop and frisk is not enough. There has to be reasonable suspicion that some crime has been committed or is about to be committed. And just a plain standard stop and frisk is something that I don't believe that our country was built on. I don't believe that we can just stop and ask and frisk somebody when there is no suspicion that a crime has occurred. And I think that's what the law is in the state of Illinois as well, too. So that's something that I think the courts have made that determination. But again, if a police officer has reasonable suspicion that some crime has been committed, then I think then at that point, the officer has an opportunity to go up and then to determine whether he believes that there may be some kind of suspicious activity going on. Now, that doesn't mean you get to frisk at that point, but it does mean that at that point, it triggers a law officer's opportunity to go up and to examine. And I think as people in our community, we want that as well, too. We want to be protected from crime. We want to live in a safe community. And I think we have to trust our law enforcement officers that they can take one step forward. I think it's a step process as it relates to what a law officer or a police officer can do. So, but just general stop and frisk, I don't think that the courts have determined that that is constitutional.
I would say that I completely agree with Attorney McGehee here. I'm not completely aware of the statistics that go along with stop and frisk, but I do know that, you know, most times in stop and frisk cities like New York and Chicago, it has been disproportionately directed towards minorities, and those are the ones that are really feeling the brunt of stop and frisk. And yeah, like Attorney McGahee said, if it's, you know, if I'm on the street minding my business, I certainly don't want to be stopped, and you know that could potentially lead to harassment or anything. You know what I'm saying? I try to, you know, remain straight, everything legal, everything the right way. But you know, with stop and frisk, if that was legal, I would say that would, you know, put something in the back of my mind to give me another reason to feel threatened, I'd say, by the police or anyone, or any law enforcement like that. So I'm not really a fan of stop and frisk.
Stop and frisk. It originally was called the Terry stop in the 60s, I believe. And so the basis for that is, has a crime been committed, or does a police officer believe that a crime was about to be committed? It is not to see what that person has in their pockets that's just walking down the street, or something as broad a spectrum as that. And I think that's where it has really gone awry in perhaps some of these other areas, where it is a reason to come up and encounter somebody. Now, there are certainly things that are consensual encounters. Anybody's on the street, you know, I, as a citizen here or as a sheriff, can come up and say, "Hi, how you doing? I'm Jerry Bustos. You mind if we talk?" That doesn't prevent that from happening. That's not a stop and frisk. That's just a conversation. But again, the idea that you're going to stop somebody and go through their pockets, and you don't think a crime has been committed, and you don't think a crime is about to be committed, frankly, I think is inappropriate.
I would just add that as of January of this year, all law enforcement in the state of Illinois have to do stop cards anytime that they stop somebody on a reasonable suspicion, and then whether they searched or not. Very similar to the racial profiling of the being pulled over on a traffic stop.
Okay, thank you. And I you know, you mentioned the statute as we talk about stop and frisk and how it's based on a reasonable suspicion, which is a gray area. And you know, it's left to interpretation by that office. And primarily what we have seen, at least in the statistics that we are able to gather in New York City, that 85% of those stop and frisk were minorities. But only 15% of the incarcerations were minorities. So nobody went to jail, or 15% of those stopped that went to jail were minorities, which is really a small percentage when you look at it in those terms. So, final question I would ask to you two, Sheriff and Chief, is: do you believe there is implicit or explicit racial bias within your police department? And if so, what would you do to remedy that? And either one of you guys can start.
You know, that's a very difficult question because I'm not in the minds of the officer. I know when I was out on the street, somebody committed a violation, I pulled them over. We train that it doesn't matter. If there's a violation, you're not looking to see what color a person is, nationality, anything like that. You're just pulling over somebody because they commit a violation. Whether you can control every single one of those person that's on the force's feelings, I'm not going to sit here and say I can control it. We monitor it by looking at the proportionate of how many people they pull over and things like that. But we have not experienced any overwhelming numbers like you just described on any individual officers. And obviously we have something in place that we would address those issues.
Thank you. Sheriff?
Again, I can say with great certainty that in the sheriff's office, and frankly, law enforcement in Rock Island County, regardless of what police department you're talking about, I can say with great certainty there is no explicit racial bias that comes out. I just plain and simply don't see it. Now, is there an implicit, is there some unconscious bias? That's hard to say. But I would think that if it were that noticeable, that would come to the surface, i.e. if an officer, all they stopped was Hispanics, or if all they stopped were African Americans, or I just absolutely don't see it. Now, we go and talk about the unconscious bias, that's something that's completely different. I recall we were at a forum with the NAACP in Rock Island, and a question came up about the officers patrolling the neighborhoods. And I made the comment that I don't know how anybody could see the police officers patrolling the neighborhoods as being biased. Because frankly, from my perspective, that's what police officers do, right? They drive through and they try and keep your neighborhood safe. Well, it was brought up to me by one of the other members that to African Americans, perhaps that brings a connotation of the slave camps and the overseers going through the camps. Now, I can tell you, absolutely, I had never heard of that before, and I had never thought about that. But I guess in a large, broad view, yeah, I guess I got to see that. But that was a perspective that I never had even heard of, I think, my entire life. But it brought some consciousness to something that I didn't have until that question come across. So, perhaps. But we don't know until we know it, I guess.
If in fact you came across that, what would be your remedy? And understanding, I certainly understand your limitations, but what would you do to try to correct that?
Well, I think there are many things you can do, but I would start with the basis again about public service. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from or what your income level is or what you drive. You don't do that. We serve our public. We are our public, and that is where I would start, and then we would go from there.
We would look at the situation, and if we did see it, there's additional training. There's also, to become a police officer, we have to go through quite a bit of a background investigation, including a psychological examination. And we could always send somebody back for like a fitness and duty type thing, a psychological examination. You can also look at if you see it and it's not improving the behavior, we can always go to the state's attorney's office and they're not going to take any of the cases that this individual officer has, can't go forward. So we would have to give that information to the state's attorney's office and then move to terminate somebody if they are acting that way.
Thank you, and we are just about out of time. This brings our forum to a close, and certainly There are other topics and I'm sure other questions that we were not able to touch on. But as I mentioned earlier, these gentlemen are going to hang around for a few minutes to answer any individual questions you might have for them. And I see a hand going up, but I'm about to ditch this whole thing. And we're going to allow you to talk to these gentlemen individually. We do thank them for coming on such short notice. We thank you all as well. And at this time, if any of you have any closing remarks, we'll give you a minute where you can close out. Sheriff?
I'll just start by saying thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it very much. I think this is imperative that we do this more, that we get together and we talk about what's on our mind in a reasonable manner, and I think we can solve a lot of problems by doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to, this is something a little different, but Cannon Burridge here, he's a humble individual. I want you guys to be aware of what he did this summer when we talked about that basketball. That was about a 10-day planning stage. Cannon got a hold of the police department and asked, hey, can we do this United We Ball? I have some friends that have come in that are professionals as well, plus other guys in the neighborhood. I want to make this a community event. Can you guys help us out, have some of your police officers play? So we jumped on it right away, but we may have provided some of the financial support and some of the other things. We provided hot dogs and food, and the community came and helped. But Cannon got the word out. They play basketball. He puts out a text, or not even text, it's Facebook and all this other kind of stuff, Instagram. And guys just come to the ballpark or the basketball course to play. And that's what happened this day. And there was probably 300 people there playing all different ages. So he deflects a lot of the credit, but I just can't thank you enough for what you've done. And he's also mentored some kids that we have dealt with, and hopefully it will reduce any type of contact with teachers, counselors, principals, police. So, Cannon,
Thank you.
Very briefly, I'd like to thank everybody as well for coming tonight. And I just want to remind everybody that, I represent the people of Rock Island County and the people of the state of Illinois. If you see something in your community or you have a concern or a complaint as it relates to law enforcement, please write me a letter. I promise you I will read it, I will respond to it. I get a lot of phone calls, so I just can't say give me a telephone call, because sometimes I'm in court a lot and it's a little difficult sometimes to get all of the phone calls returned. But please, if that's the only way to communicate with me, then leave a message on my phone. I will get that message, and again, I will try to touch base with you, because I think that's very important in our community, that if there is a complaint, that those complaints be addressed, and that there is a discussion and some communication that goes on. So please contact me if you feel like you have a concern. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I wanted to thank everyone for coming as well, and I thank Alderman Westbrook here for the opportunity for me to be a part of this panel. Things like this is right up my alley. I love seeing the community come together, talk about any issues that we may have, before anything negative happens. Let's start. Let's set the example. Show what we can be, and I believe this is one of the major steps to doing that. So I'm happy to be a part of it, and I thank you all for coming.
Thank you all. And if we could give our panel a round of applause. And we thank you all for coming as well. Before we leave, I just want to add one more thing about this young man right here. First of all, when he brought that event to Hereford Park, CNN picked up that story. So he has officially put East Moline on the map, and Watertown as well. And to add to that, once we connected with one another, this young man is dedicated and devoted to his community. He's not just a whole bunch of, as my mom used to say, breath and britches. He's there, actively involved. When you call him, he shows up. So I certainly we want to continue to encourage him, even though he's going to Australia, and I wish I could go with him. But thank you all once again, and good night. Thanks, John. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.